To tidy up this floor. Mm, I want student. Good morning, everybody, from my neck of the woods. I'm gonna put this off and on and off. I was feeling a little bit chilly, and now I'm feeling warm. Oh boy. Today we have the story of another African tale. This is from Nigeria. Also of sacrifice for the greater good. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Tochi, above the men's and the women's. My website is at tochi.us or drtochi.com. You can book your spiritual consultations and your dream interpretations with me on my website, tochi.us or drtochi.com. If you're looking for a straightforward consultation, we'll discuss your issue and arrive at the solution to your issue. And then that's where you need to go. Okay. The Reclaim Your Authority Level 1. Reclaim Your Authority starts March the 22nd. Reach out to us to register for it. Level 2 starts on March the 29th. And level 2 is for those who have done level 1. So that is also open for registration. So register for level 2 if you're qualified, and register for level 1 if you just want to start. Reclaiming Your Authority. Level 2 is embody your authority. If you have been called to spiritual practice, it will be very helpful for you to register for these retreats. So you can send us an email and we will direct you on how to secure your seat. These are not mass events, so small groups. They're small groups. Okay. So that everyone can get attention. Everyone can be attended to. If there are large groups, then it becomes challenging to handle. Okay. Good morning, Missy Faye. Good morning, Miss Kiona. Good morning, Bankole. Good morning, Mammy. Let me get the TikTok people started. Kind of forgot about them. Sometimes it's such a hassle to deal with TikTok that I just wonder why I bother. I've kind of given up on Instagram and Facebook. I don't even know that people, I guess people still watch live streams on those platforms, but I don't know. I just kind of gave up on those too. Remember to like and share the video. Give it a thumbs up so that your classmates will be notified that we are in session. And also, the thumbs up and the hearts encourage me to put out more material like this. So remember to give the live stream itself a thumbs up and a share. Let others know that class has started. A thumbs up. Give that to the live stream itself. Okay. Today we're going to discuss the legend of okay. I practiced this. If you are an Igbo speaker, feel free to correct me. If I'm not pronouncing this correctly, feel free to correct me. Ahajioku, Ahajioku, and Ada. Ahajioku, Ahajioku. There are so many ways this can be pronounced. Ahajioku and Ada. Okay? This legend is the core story of Igbo creation, the creation of the Igbo nation, the people of the Igbos. I shouldn't even say Igbo nation because there were so many villages and so many Igbo people doing their own thing. They never really came together as one nation. And even till today, that's a problem coming together. So it forms the core of Igbo creation, how the Igbos came about, and also how they got the major crops that they eat, farm and eat. And this creation story is linked to the Enri kingdom, Enri, Nri. And like I said, if I am butchering some of the pronunciations, forgive me and correct me. Okay. Remember the last one we did about the Ashantis, where Nana offered himself up for the good of the nation, but he did it with terms and conditions. We will see how the Igbos handled this issue of survival. Uh, We'll see how the Igbos handled their issue of survival. And we can look back and say, Has it been of benefit to them or not? Remember to give the live stream a thumbs up and a share. For all those who are watching, remember to give the live stream a thumbs up and a share. For those of you on TikTok, remember to give it a heart. That encourages me to put out more material like this. Okay. So we see that when we looked at the Ashanti story, the creation of the Ashanti. Wait a minute. Hold on. Thank you for liking the live, Simone Signature Beauty. I want to share with you guys something funny. TikTok says this is the AI summary from TikTok. It says discussing the legend of Joker and the creation of the evil nation. It's not evil nation, Igbo, Igbo nation. The legend of Ahajioku, not Joker. The AI, TikTok's AI say Ahajioku is Joker and Igbo is evil. Oh my God. That is too funny. Anyway, we'll carry on. So we see that in the creation of the Ashanti nation, okay, that the sacrifice that was done to build the Ashanti nation was done with terms and conditions. The person who got involved said, I will help birth this. Miss Ife, Miss Ife, I am just telling you, AI is just out of control. Okay, it's just out of control. So, the person who helped with the birth of the Ashanti nation did it with terms and conditions. Okay, the person did it with terms and conditions. The person didn't just say, okay, I'm going to offer myself and I hope that y'all do right by me and do right by my family. He said, no, here are the terms and conditions under which I am going to offer myself for the birth of the Ashanti nation. And you must swear to it that you will fulfill these terms and conditions. And he gave the three terms and conditions. Okay. Three is the number of manifestation. For those of you who are into numerology and into numbers, three is a number of manifestation. We take the male principle, the female principle, they come together and produce an outcome. So you have three conditions. Okay. Just those three conditions that guaranteed the birth of the Ashanti nation. So, but here now we're going to look at the Igbo story, their creation story, and we're going to see how different this one is. So, the legend begins with Eri, the mythological founding father of the Nri. So, Eri was the father of the Nri people. And the Nri people are a subgroup of the Igbos. The Igbo people, they're different people that came together to form the Igbos. You have the Nri people, you have the Arab people, okay? You had the Idemili people, you had the Omambala people, you had people come from the Delta, you even had people come down from the Middle Belt. And these different groups came together to help form what is known today as the Igbo tribe. So this story comes from the Nri subgroup. According to the tradition, Eri was sent down from the sky by Chukwu, the great god. When Eri arrived, the earth was not solid. It was a watery, marshy morass. There was nowhere firm to step up. And we can see in the story, remember when we looked at some other stories and myths of creation, water was featured prominently. Remember, I mentioned that before. In cultures across the globe, water is featured prominently as part of creation. Chukwu, that is the great god, sent a blacksmith from the sky to blow fire on the earth, to dry the earth and make it habitable. So here again, we have the concept of the fire element. So according to the story, we're now seeing, if we analyze it metaphysically, we see that what the Nri are saying is water plus earth, water plus fire plus air gives rise to earth. There was water. The first element was water. The second element was fire. The third element was air. And then the fourth element was earth, the soil. Okay? So you see how that got embedded into the story, the concept of the elements and how they came about. And remember, when we look at the cosmology of the Igbos, there is reverence for these four elements. And traditionally, they call upon the spur guides of these four elements. They call upon that of water, fire, of air, and of earth. You have to call all of them in order for your ritual or your prayers and petitions to be complete. Okay? While the earth was now firm beneath their feet, Eri and his people faced a new desperate problem. There was no food. A terrible famine gripped the land, and the people were starving. Eri called out to Chukwu, pleading for a way to feed his children and save his lineage from extinction. So when Eri was sent down, I know that at the beginning of the story it just says, well, Chukwu sent Eri down, but we're now seeing that Eri wasn't the only one. Eri must have come down with some women, at least one woman, and they started procreating. And they must have come down with some kind of sustenance that ran out while the land was being, during that process of making the land firm. There's something else I'd like to point out in the story. This legend also supports the scientific account of how the earth was formed. First, it was a gaseous material that coalesced into solidity, started coalescing, coming together before earth, okay, that was formed. And so, and when the earth formed and was forming, one of the first things on earth was the water that was formed before earth was formed, according to science. When you look at this legend, you see that it maps that story. It maps that. So Eri and his people, and remember amongst the Igbo people, the lineage is very important. It's a patriarchal system, patrilineal system that says you inherit through the father, and the family name is continued through the father. So we see in this myth, he had to call out to Chukwu because he was like, I have to feed my children, and so that my lineage will not go extinct. He didn't want his lineage to die out. So Chukwu, the great God, answered Aries' prayers, but the solution demanded an unimaginable price. Chukwu told Eri that to bring food to the earth, he had to offer up sacrifice. He had to offer up his first son, Ahajioku, and his firstborn daughter, Adam. He had to offer up his first son and he had to offer up his first daughter. And when we hear these kinds of things in these stories, we wonder, why is it that when the people are faced with these huge problems, the great deity or God that they worship will now say, I want you to make this huge sacrifice. Give me your child or give me your children. Give me the important ones. Because in the Igbo culture, the first son is very important, and the first daughter is also very important. They have very important positions and status and functions in the Igbo culture and the Igbo society as a whole. And here we have Chukwu saying, you must give me that which gives you status. You must give me that which you prize in order for you to get food to feed everybody else. And when you look at how the Igbos conduct themselves, this idea of sacrificing the first son and the first daughter still continues till today. Usually, the first son or the first daughter is expected to, to sacrifice themselves and work hard to take care of their younger siblings and to take care of the family. And if there are any Igbo people in the house, they will confirm that for you. Are there any Igbos in the house? Yes, there are Igbos in the house. Miss Ife, is this true? It is the expectation. There's a lot of expectation for the first son and the first daughter. I know for sure that Miss Ife is Igbo. Okay. So she said that's correct. This is the origin of it. The first son and the first daughter in Igbo culture. This is the origin of how and why they are expected to sacrifice themselves. This is the origin of it. Okay, now the AI summary is correct. It says analyzing the myth of Eri, where a sacrifice is made to bring water and food. Well, I don't know about the water, but the food, yeah. Okay. So you see that this concept of the sacrifice of the first daughter and the first daughter has been embedded into the culture and it is told in stories. This is what is expected of you. Even if it unalives you, this is what we expect of you. Because we're now seeing it in the Igbo creation story. So Chukwu answered Aries' prayers, but the solution demanded this unimaginable prize. Eri was horrified and initially refused. However, as the as the famine worsened and his people grew closer to extinction, Chukwu, the great god, reiterated the command, promising Eri that the sacrifice would provide food not just for Eri's family, but for all generations to come. Make the sacrifice to feed yourself and your family and the generations to come, the people to come. We see a parallel to the Ghanaian story. And so Eri had to decide, do I allow folks to pass into extinction? Or can I make this sacrifice so that others will live? With a heavy heart, Eri realized that he had to weigh the lives of his two eldest children against the survival of his entire people. If you are a parent, are you willing to give up two of your children so that the rest of your family members will live and the members of your tribe will live? That's a very heavy expectation. That's a very heavy burden to expect of anybody. But as it was, that was the dilemma of these people. Submitting to divine will, Eri carried out the sacrifice. And this is what made it so dreadful. Ladies and gentlemen, he had to make the sacrifice himself. Okay. Just like, the biblical story of Abraham and Isaac, where, which eye am I putting this under? Is this one? Um, okay. Where Abraham was told, you know what? You need to bring up Isaac and offer up Isaac as a test of obedience. Same thing was happening here. Harry was being told, not only do you have to bring your children, but you will be doing the offering. You see how hard and dreadful the situation was for him. So so he and remember, well, I shouldn't say remember because you probably don't know, but Ari was also the first spiritual practitioner for his people. So that's why he was the one who could cry out to Chuku, and Chuku would answer him. He was the spiritual practitioner for his people. So imagine being the spiritual practitioner, you're the shaman for your people. You're the one who intercedes, you're the one who speaks to God on behalf of your people. And you have to give up your own children to ensure the survival of your people. That's a very difficult position to be in. And this also underscores why people expect that of a spiritual practitioner in these kinds of cultures. They're like, okay, you have been sacrificing, you're used to sacrificing, keep on sacrificing, even if your own life is at stake. But it also underscores why spiritual practitioners are highly respected in Igbo culture. They're called, a term for them is mouth of the gods because in their spiritual practice, it is not unusual for them to make heavy personal sacrifices in order to make sure that all goes well in the kingdom or in the nation or in the town or the village. It's not unusual. So I'm not talking about modern Igbo culture now where 99% of the Igbos are now Christianized. No, let me say 95% of Igbos are Christianized, 4% of Igbos are Islamicized, and you probably have less than 1% who are respecting the traditional culture. But even amongst those who are Christianized and Islamicized, they have it in the back of their head that the spiritual practitioner, the shaman, is not to be messed with, the true one, not the fake ones, not the social media ones, the real ones. And when things get very tough in the community, regardless of whether people are Christians or Muslims or whatever in the Igbo culture, they will call upon the spiritual practitioner to get involved, especially when problems are intractable, problems they cannot solve by themselves. The spiritual practitioner will be called. They may do it secretly, they may do it privately, but the practitioner will be called. Because of this, they're the ones who offer up the sacrifice. So Aries submitted to divine will and he carried out the offering. Okay, Missy Faye says that's true up till now. Yeah, You will still see people saying, I'm Christian, I'm a member, I'm a chosen, I'm a chosen. But there are certain things that happen in the family or the community, they will go and call spiritual practitioner. They will call a dibia. Mhm. So before the two children were buried, a crucial ritual took place that will forever mark Igbo culture. Chukwu instructed Eri to cut specific ceremonial marks into the foreheads of Ahajioku and Ada. There were certain incisions that had to be made on the foreheads of Ahajioku, his first son, and, and Ada, his first daughter. These deep grooved facial scars are known as ichi. This is the origin of ichi, the tribal marks that are made on the faces of Igbo people, especially those who are titled. And I'm not talking about those who become Nze and Ozo under the auspices of the Catholic Church and have no power. I'm talking about those who do it traditionally. As an aside and as an explanation, and to give you context, when these marks are made on the face of an Igbo person, there are certain herbs, powdered herbs. Usually, these things have been reduced to activated charcoal. The herbs and roots and things of that nature, even animal parts, they're reduced to charcoal and they are rubbed into these marks. And each mark has its own significance. If it goes down, if it comes across, if it comes at an angle, if it is curved, these ichi have meanings. And the location of these marks also have meanings. So you will see some Igbo people, not nowadays, because people don't really do that now. But you'll see some people having marks here. Some people have marks here, especially if they had illness as a child. Some would have marks here. Some would have marks here. And some would have on the scalp, especially spiritual practitioners. And this medicine will be rubbed into it. And these scars, these ichi, are not light cuts, they're deep cuts. They're deep. Okay. So Chukwu instructed Eri to cut these ichi into the foreheads of his two children that he just offered up. This act of marking the children elevated them. Remember what I said it is done to titled people? It signified that their unaliving was not a punishment, but a sacred, noble consecration. There are certain secret, sacred initiations that are done in Igbo culture, and you must get ichi. It is not negotiable. If you don't get the ichi, you are not initiated and you are not recognized as an initiate. And there are some initiations where there are levels. So for each level of initiation, you get a fresh cut. It could be on your chest. There's sometimes they get them on the chest, on the back, on the shoulder, on the belly, on the back, the thighs. And you could look at somebody from that Igbo culture, especially, the older Igbo people, and you're looking at all these scars, scarification on their body, and you will know that this person is very titled and very fortified. They're spiritually titled, materially titled, and spiritually fortified. They're physically fortified. And you don't play with them. Okay. So this was a signifier to both man and spirit that these children were not being punished, but they were being consecrated. After making the marks on the foreheads of his children, he buried Ahajioku in one grave and Ada in a different one. Now, Chukwu instructed Eri to wait and watch these two graves for 12 days. To watch the graves of his children for 12 days. Eri obeyed while he was mourning his children. Okay, Missy Faye says the last of them in your community is no more. Yeah. People now, unfortunately, don't do it. But if you go amongst the Yorubas still do it. The Igbos really got decimated by Christianity, unfortunately. So Eri obeyed and he watched his children's graves for 12 days while he was mourning the loss of his children. On the 12th day, a miracle occurred. Now, 12 days in Igbo culture is 3 weeks because each week in the Igbo culture is 4 days. So he had to wait for 3 Igbo weeks. And we also see 3 showing up. Number 3 is a number of manifestation of the male principle and the female principle. Ahajioku, his first male, represents the male principle. Ada, his daughter, represents the female principle. Offering his son and and his daughter and putting them in the ground symbolizes planting in the womb. It is in the womb that the male cell, I have to be mindful of the platform, and the female cell, the egg, unite. The womb, remember that the earth is also considered a womb. The earth is a womb. That's why we refer to earth as her, Mother Earth, the earth goddess. And so when we look at this story metaphysically, we're also seeing how children, how people are created. You get the female and the male, and they are buried in the womb. And we will see what happens after 3 Igbo weeks. Manifestation. On the 12th day, when the miracle occurred, From the grave of his son Ahajioku, a thick leafy vine sprouted. Eri dug into the earth. He dug into his son's grave and found a large starchy tuber. This was the first yam. G. In the Caribbean, this yam is called the Negro yam or the white yam. When we say yam, we're not talking in the Americas. When we say yam, usually we mean sweet potato. This is not the sweet potato. This is yam, that big white tuber. Nyame. That's the origin. Now, the same thing happened from the grave of his daughter Ada. And when Eri dug there, he found a small starchy tuber. And this was the first cocoyam. Ede. This is, to give context, this is taro. For those of you from the Caribbean, this is taro. In some tellings of the story, some people say it was cassava, which is also known as tapioca. But in this version, it is ede, the cocoyam. Edo. If you go to the Caribbean store, it's called Edo. Some of you might know it as the Edo. It's small. It looks like a small white yam. And when you cut into it, it's also white and starchy. So when we look at this metaphysically, what does this mean? The yam represents the production of the males, the male principle, and the cocoyam represents the production of the female principle. So from the unity of the male and the female was the production of more males and more females. Because if you know or if you are familiar with how the yam is produced, you can take a tuber of yam and cut it up into wedges, big wedges. And if you plant those wedges in the ground, each of those wedges will produce more yams. Same thing with the cocoyam. You can cut it up in different pieces, put it in the ground, and they will produce, and each piece will produce one or more tubers, big tubers of itself. It's very starchy, very high in calories, very sustaining. And you can cook it in a variety of ways. Chukwu told Eri to cook the tubers. When Eri and his people ate these tubers, they found the food sweet, sustaining, and deeply nourishing. And this was how the famine was broken. Can I put up the spelling of the first meal? Yeah. Ahajioku. That's why I said if you are Igbo, you can correct my pronunciation. Ahajioku. So now you have people, when they ate the yam and they ate the cocoyam, they were satisfied. If you interact amongst yourselves, if you honor yourselves and honor your sacrifice, or honor the sacrifice that was made for you, you will live, you will prosper, you will be fed. Chuku, the great god, commanded Eri to distribute the yams to the neighboring people. So there were other people there who were not Nri people, but he told him, give it to the other people around. But with a specific condition. Now, remember, we talked about condition. Because before we go into the condition, pay attention. Eri and his people could eat the yam and the cocoyam without conditions. Because this was his own bloodline. Okay? But for other people who were not of his bloodline and not of his people, who were not Nri people, they could only eat of that yam with conditions. And let's hear what the condition was. Because the yam was born from the blood and spirit of Aries' eldest son, the Inri people would forever hold spiritual authority over the earth and its agricultural cycles. And this is very deep. This is the reason why when there are certain rituals that are done in different parts of Igbo land, only the people from Nri can perform those rituals. And what kind of rituals are these? Rituals that pertain to the earth. This is what gave them that spiritual authority. That sacrifice that Eri made and planting his son in the ground, planting his daughter in the ground, authorized the Nri people in perpetua to be the land element priests of anybody who ate yam in Igbo land. So if you eat yam and you're an Igbo person and you eat yam, that is a spiritual condition. It is the Nri people who have supreme spiritual authority over your earth. I didn't say physical authority, spiritual authority. Note I said spiritual authority. There's certain powerful land-based or earth-based rituals. If you want to do them and do them successfully, a person from Nri must come there and preside over that ritual. They have to be in charge. It doesn't mean you can't have your own priest. It doesn't mean you can't have your own priestesses. It doesn't mean you can't do your own rituals. But when it comes to the heavy duty stuff, a person from Nri must be there. And back in the day, before people started doing things for themselves and started doing strange things, when people wanted to do anything pertaining to the land or agriculture, people from Nri were sent for. They will send for shamans, they will send for native doctors, they will send for spiritual practitioners from Nri to come and do it for them. Back in the day. This is the reason why when there is cleansing of the land to be done, if an abomination has been committed against the land, it is only the Nri people who can come and cleanse that land and the people of that abomination. Because their bloodline is already in the earth. So their blood in the earth speaks for them and authorizes them. There you go. Okay, Miss Ife is sharing. For example, we were told that it's only the Inri people that can bury a person that hung on a tree with a rope to unalive themselves. Yeah, that's true. If the person unalived themselves by any means, back in the day, it was only the Inri people who were allowed to come and bury that person. Or if you had to bury the person because of expediency, you still had to invite an Inri person to come and cleanse the land because that was considered an abomination. And they were spiritually authorized to do so because they were the first ones who had their bloodline added to the soil, to the earth, to the Igbo earth. They paid the first price. So that is why they were granted spiritual authority. Anything pertaining to earth. And if you're paying attention to this legend, they're not saying, okay, the Umri people have authority over the water. No, the Umri people have authority over the earth. If you have a situation where somebody took out their mother, unalive their mother, unalive their father, unalive their sibling, unalive their child, it was still an angry person who would come and do the cleansing of the person, the family, and the land. He would send for them. If you had unlawful unaliving, it was still the angry people that had to come and cleanse the land and cleanse the community. This is what gave them that spiritual authority. They made the first sacrifice to the earth. So Chukwu commanded Eri to distribute the land, the yams, sorry, to other neighboring peoples, with the condition that the Nri people would forever hold spiritual authority over the earth, and earth meaning the Igbo earth, and its agricultural cycles. The spirit of the sacrificed son did not die, but ascended to become Ifejioku or Ahajioku, the deity of the yam, wealth, and agriculture. So the spirit of the sun became a spirit god. It became a spirit god for the yam, which is a sign of sustenance. became a spirit guide of wealth and a spirit guide of agriculture. And people could now venerate this deity. The yam became a male crop, requiring great strength to cultivate and serving as the primary measure of a man's wealth and status in traditional Igbo society. Back in the day, an Igbo man's status and wealth was determined in part by how many yams he had in his barn. And Igbo men back in the day used to love showing off their barns. It's just like someone today showing off their car collection or showing off their house. Back in the day, an Igbo man will be so proud to show you his yam bar because the more yams he had there, the more assurance that he would never go hungry, his family would never go hungry, because not only would they have enough yams to eat, but they will have enough yams to plant and make more yams. And they could hire people, they could pay people, they could do a lot of things. They could sell the yams, store them in the barn, open air barn. And their barns used to be like, imagine these walls with yams, yeah, walls made of sticks and palm fronds and things like that. And they would tie these yams, and that was a big undertaking called Ikejinoba. Ikejinoba, it was a procedure. Ikejinoba means to tie the yams in the barn. And you would call all the males. If you didn't have enough males in your family, you would call other males and they will come and help you tie up all your yams in these standing walls. And you would feed them, give them meat, give them yams to eat, give them all kinds of things to eat because it was a lot of work and they had to climb. And these are very tall walls of yam. And that's why amongst the Igbo, stealing yams is a capital crime. Stealing yams is like stealing someone's money, stealing the person's valuables. It's considered a terrible thing to go and steal someone's yams in the Igbo culture. Okay. So the yam became a male crop requiring great strength to cultivate and serving as the primary measure of a man's wealth and status in Igbo land. The cocoyam born from Ada, the firstborn daughter, became known as the female crop, foundational to the household and to women's agriculture. So it was the women who cultivated the cocoyam. And the cocoyam was used for a variety of dishes. The yam could be made into the fufu. Some of you might be familiar with fufu. And the cocoyam will be made into the soup. And you ate them together. See, this is also a representation of the union of the male and female principles. It's a representation of the union of the male and the female principle. Pounded yam fufu was considered a heavy duty meal. It's very starchy, very high in calories. And at some point, it was only, at some point, I mean, that was the main thing before people started making fufu out of cassava, out of tapioca. To this day, the facial ichi marks given to Ahajioku before his passing became the symbol of the highly revered Ozo title holders in Igbo society, representing nobility, suffering, and sacred leadership. In the Ozo cult or society, they have levels. They have 9 levels. And each level, I'm talking traditionally speaking, I'm not talking about the modern thing they do now under the Catholic Church. Because when the Catholic Church came to Igbo land, they tried to wipe out the Ozo and Zen Ozo society. They were like, that is heathen, that is pagan. They tried to wipe it out. But when those Catholic priests found out that they could not wipe it out, they had to now Christianize it. And in order to Christianize it, they had to approve approve the rituals that were used for initiating men into the Nzenozo society. And by being the ones to approve the initiatory processes, they stripped it of its spiritual power. So that's why you have today people who got initiated, because there are 2 ways to initiate into Zenozo today. You can do it the traditional old school way, or you can do it the Christian Catholic way. And a lot of people choose the Catholic way because they don't want to go to hell. But a lot of them don't understand that when they do it the church way, it's empty. The initiation, the title, it becomes spiritually empty because they're not taught what they need to know. When folks go to initiate into Zenozo the traditional way, they are taught to be healers, they are taught to be spiritual practitioners, they are taught to be leaders. Because it's from the Ozo society that the leaders of the community are chosen. And back in the day, in order to be a successful leader, you had to know not just how to administer and to manage people, you also had to know how to heal the people, how to resolve their problems, how to solve their problems. You had to be a spiritual practitioner as well as a leader. And in order to be a spiritual practitioner, you had to be initiated into the mysteries, the Igbo mysteries and the Igbo occult knowledge. But the Catholic Church went in there and said, nah, 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 nah. That's devilish and demonic. And many Igbo men, because remember again, we're talking about a patriarchal society, so the women don't get initiated into this. But the men, so a lot of the men, in order to remain Christians, not to be shunned by others, and not to be looked at weirdly by others, will choose the Christian titleship. They will choose the Christian path of it. And they'll have great fanfare and everything, and the Catholic priest will be there to sprinkle holy water on them and wave incense around and pray and do all kinds of things. But they come away without the power. They come away without the spiritual knowledge. They don't, no one's teaching them how to put this and this together in order to make medicines. But you still have some people who do it traditionally, very few. And those men are pretty powerful. Because if you come to them and say, I have a cough, they know what to give you. If you come to them and say, I have a headache, they know what to give you. If you come to them and say, someone is stealing my stuff, they know what to do to stop it. If you come to them and say, I'm having nightmares, they know what to do to stop it. If you tell them, oh, there is a dispute in the family, they know how to mediate that. They know how to judge that. Okay. The New Yam Festival, known as Iriji, Iwaji, or Ikeji, depending on the specific dialect and region, is the most important cultural and agricultural festival in Igbo land. It is the direct modern descendant of the Ahajioku legend, serving as a powerful living memorial to the sacrifice that brought food to the people. So that's why today, if you go to Igbo land, you have different towns and villages that will have yam festivals. Some have their yam festivals to celebrate the planting of the yam. Some people have festivals to celebrate the harvesting of the yam, the eating of the first yam. Some people or some towns and villages have celebrations to say, okay, we've harvested the yams and now we're going to tie them in the barn. Some places will have the festival, we've harvested the yam and now we're about to eat the first bit of the yam, of the new yam. Okay. So before the New Yam festival can begin, a strict taboo is enforced. No one is allowed to eat the newly harvested yams. And that holds till today. A lot in Igbo land, a lot of new yam festivals are held in early fall. So you'll have like August, September. That's when those yams are harvested. But when they're harvested, a festival, a ritual has to be done before people can start eating that new yam. So you can eat your old yams until the festival is done. Okay. The days leading up to the festival are marked by the consumption or discarding of all old yams from the previous year's harvest. So you have to eat up all the old yams before you start on the new ones. This represents a physical and spiritual cleansing. It honors the original absolute devastation of the original famine in that Aries people faced before the first yam grew. So eating up of the old yam represents finishing of all the food available and the beginning of famine before they were gifted the new yam. Remember to give the live stream a thumbs up. Okay. I'd appreciate it if you give the live stream itself a thumbs up and a heart. And if you're on TikTok, I'd appreciate some power taps. Okay. that lets the algorithm inform people that we are in class. The community must enter the new year with a clean slate, entirely dependent on the fresh bounty provided by the earth and the spirit of Ahajioku. The spiritual climax of the festival is the Iwaji, which is the breaking of the yam. This is not done individually, but it is done collectively, led by the highest ranking spiritual or political leader in the community, usually the oldest man, the king, who is known as the Eze or the Igwe. That's so the community has to come together to eat that first yam together. And that is in remembrance of how Eri and his people ate the first yam. And again, what does this also signify? It signifies a spiritual communion. This was a communion. So not only were the people eating this new yam together amongst themselves, but they were also eating it in communion with the deity, the spirit of that firstborn son. So if anyone should tell you that the Christian communion is the first communion, the only communion, they don't know what they're talking about. Whenever you sit with your spirit guides and you invite them and say, come eat with me, that is a communion. And that's what these Igbo people were doing whenever they have the New Yam festival. That's a communion. It's a spiritual communion. Because the oldest person or the spiritual practitioner standing in as the intermediary will invoke Ahajioku, the deity, and say, here is the new yam that you have given us. Come and eat with us. We're eating in gratitude. We're thankful. We're grateful. For those of you who attended our gratitude communion to the elementals, you can see that this is some context for that ritual we do every month. We do that ritual every month with members, the gratitude communion with the elementals. That's the context for that. You gave us this, you provide us with sustenance, and so we want to eat together with you. You eat with your friends, you eat with your lovers, you don't eat with your enemies. And so this is why the Igbo people celebrate this. Are you still with me? Are you understanding? Still with me? So this is not done individually, but collectively. It's a group communion. And the largest, most pristine yams are harvested for specifically for this ritual. You bring the best for this ritual. You don't keep the best for yourself and then, oh, let me get these small pieces for the deity or for my spirit guides. Because remember, at this point, Ahajioku has become an earth deity. And so, this is a lesson for all of us. When you're having a ritual of gratitude, you don't bring your leftovers, you bring the best. You don't offer your leftovers, you offer the best. And those of you who have attended rituals with me, especially my water rituals and earth rituals, you will remember that I mentioned this. And when we go to buy the things that get offered, we buy the best. We use the best that we can afford. Because there's a reason for giving the best. If you have sustained me, kept me alive, why should I give you leftovers? It doesn't make sense. The invocation, the king or the elder or the spiritual practitioner stands before the gathered community and presents the yam. Hold the yam in their hand with two hands, not with one hand. Nowadays, you have people who don't know how these traditions are. You see them holding it with one hand. It's meant to be held with two hands. He prays to Chukwu, the supreme God, the ancestors, and specifically to Ifejoku or Ahajioku, the yam deity, the spirit of Aries' sacrifice son. Thank you. Thank you for the gift, Shumba. I appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. He thanks them for a successful harvest, protection, and the gift of life. So you see, the creator is called, the ancestors are called, and then the deity of yam, of wealth, of agriculture, which is also the son of Eri, is invited. And they are thanked. That's the first thing you do. Not stuff your mouth. Stuffing your mouth is not the first thing you do. Drawing a parallel to Aries' ancient sacrifice, the king or the spiritual practitioner, whoever's leading this communal ritual, cuts the first yam. Small pieces of this yam are often scattered on the earth as a direct offering to the ancestors and the soil, returning a portion of Ahajioku's bounty back to him. They get the first portion. So that is why when we do our communion ritual, who gets the first portion? They do. We don't give leftovers. Instead, you will eat the leftovers. You give them the best. The king or the spiritual practitioner is the first to eat the new yam. So after making that invocation, after making the offering and the sacrifice, sometimes they will kill, excuse me, they will offer um they will offer a chicken and so on and so forth. And then the leader of the ritual will eat the first piece. Only after he has consumed it, signaling that the crop has been blessed and the spirits appeased, the taboo is lifted for the rest of the community, and then the rest of the community can start eating the new yam. Once the ritual is complete, the true celebration begins. The primary way the new yam is prepared for this specific feast is by roasting it. The roasted yam is eaten with a heavily spiced sauce made primarily of palm oil, red palm oil, pepper, and salt. See how simple that is. The vibrant red color of the palm oil holds deep symbolic weight. While it is a staple ingredient in West African cuisine, in the context of this ancient ritual, it subtly echoes the fluids of Ahajioku and Ada that was spilled to consecrate the earth. This festival is not just a solemn ritual, it is a massive, vibrant celebration of survival. It is a remembrance of how we got through, how our ancestors got through the famine that almost made them extinct. So there are masquerades, and back in the day, this festival was an opportunity for Igbo men to show off their wealth. So during the festival, they would have huge feasts in their own homes, and they would invite people after the spiritual practitioner of the community or the king declared that now you can start eating the new yam and lifted the taboo. The wealthy men, after eating with the king or the spiritual practitioner, will now tell people, "Come to my home and eat all the yam you can." And people would go from home to home eating yams. And I remember as a child, whenever I attended any of these festivals, of course, I was with adults. We would go from by the time you went to the second, third house, you were full because everybody's home you would go to, they would cook yams and you'll be eating yams. But then the yam portions wouldn't be huge. I mean, they would give you like a piece of yam, some oil, and you eat it, and then run off to the next person's home. But this is the deep occult meaning behind this ritual. This is the deep occult meaning behind this ritual. It is loaded. And when I look at this legend, what comes to mind is understanding that in order to manifest something, you have to bring two opposites together. You have to bring the male principle and the female principle together in order to manifest. And so when we sit down and we're doing law of attraction, and we're busy sitting there in our own heads, in our own minds, imagining things, visualizing things, that is just the female principle. And that's why the law of attraction fails for a lot of people. There is no male principle added to the mix. And the male principle is action. I think I can take these off now, right? They're supposed to be left here for 10 to 15 minutes. I've been on here for quite a bit. Does it look any different? I'm not seeing any difference, really. I'm not really seeing any difference. It says caffeine energizing hydrogel eye patches. I'm not seeing. Still have bags under my eyes. I'm not gonna look at TikTok because I have a filter going on there. But when I look over here, I'm not seeing much of a difference. Oh well. So, what questions do you have about today's story? I chose this story to be part of the Matchstick Girl series because it involves sacrifice. I used to participate in it. They're all a waste of cash. Okay, I'm not sure what you're trying to communicate there. Did I miss something? The store roller works miracles. Oh, okay. Sometimes you gotta try these things and see. Okay, I think that's what she means by they're all a waste of cash. Oh, okay. I was looking at that going, what does that mean? Okay. So, what questions or comments do you have? What observations? What have you learned from this legend? I chose this to be part of the Matchstick Girl series because young people were involved being offered up for the benefit of others. Just as the Matchstick Girl was out there taking on the role of an adult to feed her father at home, here we have the kids being put up for the benefit of the society. And the good thing about this is that the people, a lot of Igbo people today, I'm not sure, understand why they have the New Yam Festival or the meaning, the deep spiritual meaning of it. And I don't believe a lot of them understand that it's a communion. There are some places where they try to Christianize it. So they get the new yam and they're like, we're blessing this yam in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. If you're blessing your yam in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, you are not participating, you are not honoring the original person who gave up in order for you to have that yam. You're not honoring the condition that Chuku gave. That in order for you to eat this yam, you must remember and honor the original person. Yona, he had to sacrifice both of his children by him. What others had to do in order for me to be, I'm overwhelmed with gratitude, and so am I. It's not easy to do. It is a community communion with the deity of wealth. And this is the reason why there was a lecture given by the Ooni of Ife some years ago when he said, anybody who pursues the Igbo people out of their community is inviting poverty. You should be happy if Igbo people come to live among you because wherever Igbo people are, there they come with the deity of wealth. They come with the deity of wealth. So if they come to your town, your village, your city, your community, they're bringing the deity of wealth with them. And that town, that village, that city, that area will prosper. And so we can see that Ahajioku or Ifejoko is a deity of wealth. It's not the only deity of wealth amongst the Igbos, but this was a primary deity of wealth. And this is the reason why, if you are a spiritual practitioner, according to the Igbo culture, when you celebrate the New Yam festival for yourself and your family, you will also have to celebrate the New Yam festival for your spirit guides too. Because here we have a connection of wealth with the earth element. And there are other deities of wealth in that culture, in the Igbo culture. And a lot of them are connected with the soil, with the earth. And so when you celebrate this festival, and when you're going to eat this new yam, you just don't eat it for yourself. You also do it and involve all the spirit guides you work with as a spiritual practitioner. So it becomes a big feast. Okay. Okay, Sweet Mommy says, this was so insightful. I never understood the meaning of the New Yam Festival. I'm truly grateful too. You're welcome. Okay, Kiona says, thank you. You're welcome. I'm so grateful, Dr. Tochi. I tuned in today. I really appreciate your teaching today. It makes a lot of sense. You're welcome. Thank you for teaching. Thank you, Miss Stephanie. Thank you, Missy Faye. So now you know a little bit more than some of the guys around you, right? So I suggest, this is just my suggestion, when next you have the opportunity to participate in the New Year Festival, do it intentionally. Be intentional about it. Just don't go there and start swallowing the new yam. Do it intentionally. As you eat the new yam, invite your spirit guides, invite your ancestors, invite your guardian spirit, invite all the invitables. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. You can do it even in the privacy of your own home, according to your own means. You can sit there, even if you're there by yourself or you're there with your nuclear family, you can say, I invite you, my creator. I invite my guardian spirit, my chi. I invite my ancestors. I invite my spirit guides to eat this new yam with me. And I invite the deity of the Siam, the deity of wealth, the spirit of Ahajioku or Ifijioku. I invite you to this feast. And I'm grateful that you fed my ancestors and you feed me. All the ways you feed me: yam fufu, yam poundo, boiled yam, yam porridge, vegetable yam, roasted yam, dun, fried yam. I'm grateful. I invite you to eat with me and give them the first portion. If you were late for today's class, I invite you to watch the replay so that you can get the complete picture of what we covered today. And we can see in this Matchstick Girl series that some of the sacrifices made sense and some didn't make sense. But we're seeing here that these sacrifices are for the benefit of others. You're welcome, sweet mommy. And I want to add this. We can be intentional in our own little ways. It doesn't have to be huge. You don't have to spend a lot of money. There are some times I might be somewhere, okay? I may not have access to my usual resources, my people and stuff. And I need to speak with my crew or speak with certain spirit guides. I will give them what I have. And I will say, this is how I feel in my heart as I give you this. And I'm grateful. And remember, those of you who attended the monthly gratitude ritual, remember what we say. We're grateful for what you've done in the past. what you're doing for me now, and what you're yet to do for me. We're grateful. We're grateful for the things you're doing for us that we know about and the things we don't know about. And I'm bringing my real self to this spiritual table. I may be doing this correctly. I may be doing this incorrectly. But either way, I ask you to eat with me, even as you walk with me. Don't let me walk alone. Don't let my children walk alone. Don't let my children walk alone. Don't let my husband or my wife walk alone. Don't let my family walk alone. Don't let my community walk alone. Put it in your own words. There are times like I said, I might be in a place, especially out of town, where I don't have access to the new yam or whatever it is that I need to celebrate or remember. And I will say, well, here's what I have. And I just want this to signify I just want this to signify my gratitude, because it's very easy for me to focus on my challenges and on my problems and forget about my successes and my victories. And you can sit quietly and gather yourself together. And for those of you who attended the gratitude ritual, did we jump around and skip around and use a lot of grandiose words and stuff? No. It was a very simple, straightforward ritual. Because when you're dealing with your spur guides, they want you to bring your authentic self to the table. They're not interested in your human hair wig. They're not interested in your expensive cosmetics, both the ones that work and the ones that don't work. They're not interested in all those extra things. What they want is you. I am grateful. I also advise, if you can remember it, when you wake up in the morning, let I am grateful be one of the first things that you say in the morning before you start talking to anybody. I know I may not be where I want to be. I may not be now where I hoped to be, but I'm not where I used to be. I may not now be the person I want to be, but I am no longer the person I used to be. And for that, I'm grateful. There are many times I'm going through my life and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going by instinct. But even when I make mistakes, you still save me. Even when I make mistakes, you still save me. And for that, I'm grateful. I could have been paying a higher price for my mistakes and my ignorance and my naivety. But so we have a lot to be grateful for. Okay. Says New Yam Festival is between August and October. Yeah, that's why I said it was early fall. In the United States, you can track different Igbo communities, and they usually publicize when they celebrate their New Yam Festival. And you can go, usually the New Yam festivals are free. They will usually rent a hall. They will have food and drink. You don't have to pay for nothing. All you have to do is dress up and show up. Wherever there are Igbo communities and they have a New Yam festival, you don't have to pay to go in. You just dress up and show up. It's really powerful. I still feel the spirits from that gratitude ritual. Okay. They sat amongst us for real. You're welcome, Miss Kiona. We have a Nigerian community in Trinidad. Trinidad has a huge Nigerian community, both from slavery and from immigrants. Trinidad has a huge Nigerian community. They practice a lot of traditional religions, especially Ifa in Trinidad. Okay. But not all Nigerians are Igbo. So the fact that someone says they're Nigerian in Trinidad doesn't necessarily mean that they're Igbo. This is an Igbo tradition. Okay. So, any other questions about today's class? If you're going to make a sacrifice of something that's dear to you, be very sure as to what you're getting out of it. Be very clear as to the terms and conditions. Be ready to stand even when others fall away. There are a lot of Igbo people whose lives are desolate without these traditions. Because they have abandoned all of this and said, "Oh, I'm Christian now." Which is a tragedy. If you go to Igbo land in Nigeria now, a lot of Igbo people there don't even know how to speak Igbo. They've become so Christianized. Even their spiritual practices, indigenous spiritual practices, a lot of it has been Christianized. So you will go to a spiritual practitioner in Igbo land, and they're loaded up on candles and incense, and they're loaded up on, like, there are some people that say they're spiritual practitioners, and when you go to their shrines, you will see Hindu deities there from India. You will see Indian incense, Indian products, Hindu products. You will see Chinese products. You will see Chinese deities, pictures, hangings, paintings. And you'll be there asking them, well, where is the Igbo deity? And they will point to a picture of a deity from a different culture. That's very common in Igbo land now. And because the Igbos are so connected to money, even the ones that say, oh, they're no longer involved with Christianity, are more concerned about the money. And if you, and this is a challenge for those of you who are Igbos listening to today's class, ask them to tell you the story of Ahajioku, how it came about, and the spiritual meaning of the Ahajioku festival. 95% will not be able to tell you what you just heard in today's class. If you ask them, how did the deity Ahajioku come about? 95% of them will not be able to tell you what you just heard in today's class. Some of them will shout at you because they don't want you to ask too deeply because they don't know. Some of them will say to you, oh, our fathers have always worshipped Ahajioku, so we just worship Ahajioku. But they don't know how that deity came about. They have no idea. They have no idea of the symbology. They have no idea of the significance. They have no idea of the occult meaning. They have no idea of the spiritual principles embedded in the story. And so this is a challenge. Only 5%, if at that, will know what we just discussed in today's class. Okay. So this is something that you have as an advantage. They can tell you of Jesus. Yeah, that's right. Because they got decimated by it. And this is the reason why their culture has not propagated the way that the Yoruba culture and religion and philosophy has propagated. Because one of the things about the Yoruba tribe is that, yes, they did get Christianized and Islamicized, but majority of them never really let go of their indigenous traditions. So you will see that they will practice everything. And I know I've made a joke in previous classes where I've said, when a, an average Yoruba person is faced with a problem, they will apply a Christian solution, a Muslim solution, and an indigenous religious solution. And their POV is whatever solves the problem. But an average Igbo person would cast and bind, and they will keep on casting and binding, even in the face of defeat and failure. They will keep on justifying it. And then they'll turn around and tell you, oh, it must be the will of God that I cannot solve this problem. There are a lot of Yoruba pastors who are also indigenous spiritual practitioners because they are aware that if they cannot solve the problems of their congregation with the Jesus egregore, they have to resort to other means in order to keep their congregation. But with the Igbo people, it's not that hard because your congregation is going to stay anyway. They drank the Jesus juice and they're going to stay. So even when they're not getting results, they will keep on justifying that in their own heads. So that's why in the Americas and elsewhere, you will see a preponderance of Ifa and the derivatives of Ifa, like Santeri and Condomble and Lukumi and things of that nature. Because the Yoruba culture has proven to be more adaptable. But the Igbo culture is a lot more rigid. It's not adaptable. And the Igbo culture and indigenous religions tend to be exclusionary. So as a woman, you don't have much place in the religion, in the indigenous religion, at least the way it's practiced now. And with Christianity, that made that worse. And so I kind of understand how the younger Igbo women now are focusing on being water priestesses. So you will see a whole bunch of them on social media wearing white outfits, and putting a lot of cowrie shells around their heads and necks and arms. And that's the Igbo women, the Igbo feminine energy trying to reassert itself. But the challenge with that is that, are they reasserting with or without guidance? Are they reasserting with or without guidance? With or without apprenticeship? With or without knowledge? Some of them are just like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. the way it looks like. Okay, I've seen other people on social media. I've seen people on YouTube. I've listened to Dr. Tochi on YouTube. I'm just gonna, start my own thing and do my own thing. Or I've listened to whoever it is out there. So I'm going to put my own thing together and do it. And many times I don't blame them for that because an average Igbo male spiritual practitioner will not teach you what you need to know. They will not teach you. If you're a female and you ask questions, they will not teach you. So you have a lot of the women coming out and saying, hey, we're going to keep on faking it until we make it. So, which is unfortunate. Mame, the Yam Festival is not unique to the Igbos. The Yorubas also have Yam Festival. Other people have Yam festivals. And remember, this is the Igbo explanation around their Yam Festival, why they have their Yam Festival. Each ethnic group has their own rationale behind their own celebrations. And again, remember that when these stories are told, these stories are a means of recording and perpetualizing spiritual principles. It's a lot easier for me to tell you the story of Ahajioku and Ada, and you will remember the male and female principle than it is for me to straight up teach you the male and female principle. So, oftentimes in indigenous communities, storytelling is used as a way of encoding certain spiritual and cultural principles. Remember when I told the story of the man who his father said, if you eat dog meat, you will transition? And then when he mentioned it to me, I explained to him why. Because he was saying, well, I unknowingly went and ate dog meat and I didn't transition. And I went home to go tell my father, oh, by the way, when I was in a different part of the country, I ate some dog meat. It was tasty, but I didn't transition. And the father started losing his mind. But I explained to him why. And it was because the dog was their family lineage totem. And their ancestor wanted them to respect that animal totem and told them, do not eat dog meat. And to make sure they remembered that injunction, it says, if you eat dog meat, you will transition. So the descendants of this person weren't eating dog meat. They would be like, nah, we can't do that. And in that way, they were maintaining their covenant with this animal totem of their lineage, because that was the promise that their ancestor made to the animal. It says, in my family, we will not eat you. We will venerate you. We will honor you. for all the ways you have helped us and continue to help us and will be helping us down the line. We will not eat you, we will respect you. And in order to ensure that his descendants would obey this injunction, he said, if you eat this, you will not make it. So here we have a descendant who knew of this taboo because this young man said in their family, this is one of the first things they were told as a kid. We do not eat dog meat in this family. So he knew that. But he went to another part of the country. He went to a part of a country where they eat dog meat and they use it a lot in their cuisine. And his friends took him out there to eat, and he loved it. And then on his own, he would go there and be eating this dog meat. But he was not aware it was dog meat until one day he asked the question, what kind of meat is this? It's so tasty. And the proprietor said, it's dog meat. And he was like, and after I decoded that for him, he said, you know what, Dr. Tochi, you're 100% correct. Because after I told my father what happened, my father then told me the story of why in our lineage we do not eat dog meat. So, storytelling and injunctions and superstitions are ways they are means, tools used to encode instruction. That's how we encode instruction. If you don't clean your room, the monster will get you. I remember telling my boys that if you don't clean your room, all the dirt you leave under the bed feeds the monster. And the more dirt you give it, the more it eats and the bigger it gets. And the bigger it gets, the stronger it becomes. The stronger it becomes, the more power it has. The more power it has, the more it will come for you. So my boys kept their room neat. And if for some reason they couldn't keep their room neat, they would make sure they will pile everything on top of the bed and not under the bed because they did not want to feed the monster. And guess what? As adults now, they still do it unconsciously. They'll be like, oh, I don't have time to put this thing away. They will dump it on top of the bed, not on the floor, not around the corner, not hanging it off of the doorknob or the edge of the door. So they will put everything on top of the bed where they can see it. We're not feeding the monster. I remember one time, in order to drive the point home, I crawled under the bed. And in the middle of the night, I went, ah. It was the funniest ish in the whole wide world. Yes, under their bed is very clean. Because then they were I waited about 2 a.m. I went, "Ah." They woke up so hard. They ran screaming. I shut the door, so they struggled with the door for a quick minute, and I was still under the bed going, "Ah, ah, ah," and they fought with the door before they could find their way out in the darkness, screaming, "Daddy!" The daddy knew what was going on, so daddy was like, "Did Is there dirt under your bed? And there was a silence. And then I pretended like I was coming out of the bathroom or something. I'm like, oh, what's going on? What's all that screaming for? And my husband said, some folks did not clean under their bed. And so they got a visitation. They're grown ass men now. Under their beds is not it's not cluttered. They don't even store stuff under their bed. You know how you have these things now, like you can put these storage units under your bed and stuff. They don't even do that. Under the bed is clean and vacuumed. Okay. Ah. And when it's their turn, who knows? They may do it to their own kids. Ah. So as human beings, we encode a lot of things in story. We encode a lot of things in story. We encode a lot of messages in story. And so that's why when we look at these myths and these folk fairy tales and these legends and things like that, we can get an insight into the culture. We can get an insight into how that culture operates. We can get an insight into how people of that culture think about their world and what's expected of them and their belief systems. There are many Igbo people today who don't even know why Nri people are the ones authorized to be earth element priests in the land. They just know, oh, yes, I heard that if you have these major cleansing events that need to happen, you have to invite somebody from Nri, but they don't know why. Some of them will say, oh, because the Igbos originated from Nri. I guess that's why. But they don't know the precise reason, as we discussed in today's class. And not every Igbo clan descended from the Nri. So if not every Igbo person descended from Nri, why is it that the Nri people can do these kinds of rituals for all the Igbos? They don't know why. But they will tell you, oh, yeah, is the Nri people. If there's an abomination in the land and you need to clean the abomination, you have to call the Nri people. But why? They will tell you, oh, because we're all descended from Nri. Not all Igbos are descended from Nri. So if not all the Igbos are descended from Nri, what gave them that spiritual authority to do so? They don't know why. So that's what we learn here. So we find out that what gives spiritual authority in a lot of cases is the sacrifice. When we look at the Ashanti kingdom, the reason why his people, okay, let me get the name of that chief again. Nana, Nana Twenebua Kodwa. That's why Kumau State has precedence in Ashanti kingdom. And I'm sure if you went to the Ashanti people and you say, why do the Kumau people have precedence in the Ashanti kingdom? They will say, oh, because Nana Twenebua was from Kumau State, and because he was the offering, that is why. Okay, but why exactly? What's the mechanism? Why? How was that enshrined? Do they know the three conditions that Nana Twenebua gave? Do they know the reason why he gave three conditions, not four, not one condition? They don't know why. Okay. Why did he volunteer to be the sacrifice? They don't know why. They know he volunteered, but do they know why he volunteered? When Eri offered his first two, do the Igbos know why he offered the first two? So we learn a lot about the culture. We learn a lot about the culture from these folk tales, from these legends, from these myths. All right, folks. So if there's no question, low key, you're checking under your bed. You better check, or you might hear an ah in the middle of the night. So if there are no questions, we'll call it a day today. And then let me see here. I have like several stories from Africa. You're welcome, Michiam. Are you enjoying this series? Would you like me to continue this Matchstick Girl series? Because the way I'm looking at it, it looks like we're going to have part 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 at least. Are you learning anything from it? Are you also low key looking at how you can apply this to your own life? What it means for you? Okay. Sweet mommy says to continue. All right. So we continue. Okay, Shumba says, yes, you're learning. Okay. And Shumba, remember that the full replays are available on YT. So if there are parts that you missed, I post the main thing on YT. Okay. So that you can get it there. Okay. Mrs. Allen says yes. If nothing else, it will help you understand people, why they are the way they are, why they do what they do. Like in today's story, now you understand something about the Igbo people. And like I said at the beginning of the story, you now understand why the first son and the first daughter are burdened with responsibility out the gate. Why? And so you could be an Igbo first son or Igbo first daughter, and it looks like your family, they're not cutting you no slack, and they're placing all these demands on you, and you think they hate you. Oftentimes, it's not hate, it's just a cultural expectation because that's the way they were raised. They were lit. And that's why the first son has so much power. And that's why in that culture, the first daughter has so much power. And the first daughters have their own group. When's your next money making workshop? They've been discontinued since last year for poor attendance. They were free, people were not attending, so I discontinued. We're doing that for more than a year, and people were not attending. It was free, so we discontinued it. So, as far as I'm concerned, it wasn't a value added activity for me. So I replaced it with other things. And thanks for reminding me of that. Remember that the level one Reclaim Your Authority starts on March the 22nd for 7 days. It'll be from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. CST. And level two will be from March the 29th to April the 4th, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. CST. So get your seat, participate in that, change your life. Use the opportunity to start doing your inner work. Start solving your own problems. And remember that you can only attend level two if you have completed level one. So you can start registering now. The classes are deliberately small to make it easy to facilitate. So as I was saying, so we understand from stories like this why so much power and respect is given to the first son and why so much power and respect is given to the first daughter. Because when it comes time to sacrifice for the family, it's expected of the first son and it's expected of the first daughter. Now, that's not to say that you don't have first daughters and first sons who are slackers, you know. There are first daughters and first sons who are like, forget this, I'm not going to take that responsibility. And then the next in line takes up that responsibility. Okay. So if for some reason the first son is unable or the first daughter is unable, the next one in line picks up the slack. And the respect that would have been given to the first son will be given to the second son or whatever son who picks up the slack from the first son. Same thing for the first daughter. If the first daughter doesn't pull her weight, then the next daughter that picks up the slack will get the respect that was meant for the first daughter. And if in that culture, if the first son or the first daughter does not accept this burden of responsibility, they will be ridiculed for it. And they will be reminded of it. And they will be shamed and they will be humiliated. And the family will keep saying, "What a failure you are. You don't deserve to be called the first son. You don't deserve to be called the first daughter. You don't behave." You might have heard this expression, "You don't behave like a first son. You don't behave like a first daughter." It's because of this. This is the expectation. So the responsibility put upon the first son and the first daughter in the Igbo culture is tremendous, but the status and the respect given to them is also tremendous. And some of them know how to work it, and some of them don't know how to work it. And there in some Igbo families, the sibling rivalry can be very, very marked because of this birth order and position. There can be huge conflicts in the family amongst the children, amongst the mothers, and so forth because of birth position. Who is the first and who's not the first? In general Igbo tradition, for to give you an example of how venerated the first son position is, when a man passes and he leaves sons behind, in Igbo tradition, the first son gets 2/3, and the other sons, no matter how many they are, have to share the remaining 1/3. The first son is entitled to 2/3, and a lot of those sons will enforce that. So they get majority of their father's property. And he will leave 1/3 to be shared amongst his brothers. Doesn't matter how many they are. So sometimes before a man passes, if he doesn't want a huge conflict before he passes, he lets everybody knows what they're supposed to get before he passes. So some families they will do that. And when the mother passes, her property goes to her last son. When she passes, her property goes to her last son. That's a traditional way. Now, of course, this can change depending on the family. The family can say, "No, we have our own will and we have our own way of doing things." But if you were to go to the local king or the local chief and say, "Hey, there's no will here. How are we going to divvy up things?" That's a traditional way of doing it. And in some Igbo communities, if there's no son in the family, the brother, first brother of the man, of the descendant, will inherit. So he will inherit his brother's property and his wife. So it's a very patriarchal and chauvinistic culture. Okay. And you see, it's very different from the Yoruba culture, which is more female inclusive. It's more female inclusive. All right, folks. So make sure you register for the retreats. I keep repeating it over and over because sometimes people say, "Oh, I never heard it. I wish I had heard it." So that's why I'm repeating it over and over again. Don't be writing me emails after the fact. Okay? We're thankful to our Creator, our guardian spirits, our ancestors, and our spirit guides for today's forbidden fruit and for today's lesson. May it not be wasted in our lives and in our consciousness. Ashe. Mm. We say, you know, Umaga. Amen. Thank you for coming to class. I'll see you all later. Love you all.